Good morning and a very warm welcome to all of you to the thematic session on MSMEs and climate resilience at WSDS 2022, organized by TERI, supported by EU Delegation to India, GIZ India, and TERI School of Advanced Studies. We thank you all to take out the time to join us today. Without further ado, we have the pleasure to invite Dr. Malini Balakrishnan, a senior fellow at TERI, for the welcome speech.
Thank you, Charvi. It is my great pleasure to welcome all speakers and participants to this thematic session. Micro, small and medium enterprises in India cover a wide range of sectors, and it provides employment to over 100 million people. Due to limited resources and capacities, these enterprises are poorly equipped to handle risks posed by climate change. Structure and the production facilities. They can also have indirect impacts. The MSME supply chains could be disrupted. There could be increase in prices of resources such as raw materials and energy. And finally, the market itself for the product could undergo a change. In particular, enterprises which are dependent upon climate-sensitive agricultural sector, such as food processing and textiles, are especially vulnerable. Reducing vulnerability to climate change requires MSMEs to adopt technologies that lower their emission footprints. This transition requires climate financing and a facilitating ecosystem to support its delivery. It also requires increased financial flows to market-driven climate-smart solutions offered by MSMEs and startups. Focusing on food processing and textile MSMEs, this thematic track will discuss climate change impacts and adaptation measures. I am delighted to welcome Mr. Edwin Koekkoekk, EU Delegation to India, and Mr. Vinamra Mishra, Ministry of MSME, who will deliver their addresses. Thank you, sirs, for the time that you have spent today to be with us today. Professor Gosain will present the initial findings of the project, Climate Resilience Financing in MSMEs. This will be followed by a discussion with the expert panelists, Dr. Jindal, Mr. Witch, Dr. Appulingam, Mr. Axter, and Mr. Rajiv Kumar. The panel will be moderated by Mr. Jai Gaurav. I wish you all the very best for fruitful deliberations and an enriching session. Once again, welcome and have a good session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and a very good morning to all of you. As EU Delegation, we are very proud to partner again with the World Sustainable Development Summit. And in this World Sustainable Development Summit 2022, we will actually again have our Executive Vice President of the European Commission for the European Green Deal participating on Friday in the plenary session on multilateralism. We will co-host a plenary session on global commons beyond sovereign domains, including on biodiversity. We will co-host a very interesting youth plenary session also on Friday on intergenerational conversations towards systematic transformations. We will have a thematic track on standards and business best practices, a thematic track on enablers for the revision of the state action plan on climate change and also on how to best implement them, a thematic track on the global agenda for industry transitions, a track on data-driven governance for urban resilience in smart cities, and the track that you are attending today on MSMEs and climate resilience. So we will be very active, and I think today's track is actually an extremely important one because, as also has been said in the introduction, the important role and position of MSMEs in the Indian economy. The track is actually linked to a study that we are doing on MSMEs and climate resilience under the so-called SPIPA project, the Strategic Partnership for the Implementation of the Paris Agreement project, for which the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change is the nodal ministry. It's implemented by us, the EU delegation, in close cooperation, I must say, very close cooperation with GIZ India, and it's funded by the EU and by Germany. And today, in this session, the very first findings of the study will be presented, and we hope that this session, through your interventions, through the discussions, and also through questions, can contribute to improving the study by getting more insight in the climate change impacts, both direct and indirect, the impacts being faced by the MSMEs in India, and the impacts foreseen in the mid and the long term, and also the climate change adaptation measures for which financing should be made available, and how to use these measures, and also any other elements you consider relevant for increasing the climate resilience of MSMEs. Climate change, both mitigation and adaptation, are at the core of the EU's domestic but also external policies. Both our internal and external policies are to a large extent guided by our recovery package, which is called Next Generation EU, by the European Green Deal, the climate law, the Fit for 55 package, the EU Adaptation strategy, and the EU Biodiversity strategy. We believe that the policies we put in place now should set our infrastructure, agriculture, industries, and investments on the right path towards greener solutions. The EU recovery package is underpinned by this paradigm. It's our growth strategy to overcome the challenges of climate change and environmental degradation by investing in both climate mitigation, climate adaptation, and actually the European Green Deal, together with the digital transformation agenda, are at the core of our recovery package. It provides a roadmap with actions to move to a climate neutral European continent by 2050 and a clean circular economy, restore biodiversity, and cut pollution. A key element of the European Green Deal that I want to mention is the EU climate law, which sets clear legal boundaries and which is a reduction of at least 55% of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and climate neutrality by 2050. While we do everything within our power to mitigate climate change, both domestically and internationally, we also are getting ready to adapt to the unavoidable consequences. The EU strategy on adaptation to climate change aims at building a climate resilient society by improving relevant knowledge and data, stepping up adaptation planning, and availability of state-of-the-art climate risk assessments, rollout of solutions, and helping to strengthen climate resilience globally through dialogues, partnerships, and scaling up of finance. We acknowledge the specific needs and special circumstances of developing countries, particularly least developed countries and small island development states, who are specifically vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change. Therefore, as stated in the EU Adaptation strategy, the EU will increase support for international climate resilience and preparedness, including through scaling up of international finance and stronger global engagement. Climate finance is key to drive the shift to a climate neutral and climate resilient global economy and society. The gravity of the adaptation challenge makes it a whole government, but also whole society endeavor. It's therefore vital for the private and public sectors to work together more closely, in particular on financing of adaptation. The adaptation strategy brings policy focus, but also proposes to develop tools such as digital twins of cities and apps for rapid assessment of emerging climate risks for farmers and foresters. Such tools will support the private sector to identify risks and steer investments towards adaptation and resilience. By developing and testing solutions to help meet the rising awareness of climate impacts, it will also directly help companies, from the larger ones to the MSMEs. The EU is also creating demand for adaptation solutions from the private sector. Actually, it's more raising awareness about their needs rather than creating it. We are doing this by creating legal obligations for reporting on climate risk exposures. And also with the EU taxonomy for sustainable activities, we have created clear categories for what kind of investments can be considered truly sustainable, the ones that make significant contributions to adaptation while not doing significant harm to climate mitigation or biodiversity. With the new focus of the European Green Deal, the EU is now also starting to address the misperception in both the public and private sector that adaptation is solely a cost. It is in fact an investment in our future and an opportunity for renewal and for sustainable growth. So this is my main message, that we need to think on how making ourselves more climate resilient actually contributes to strengthening the MSME sector in India. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very fruitful session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Koekkoekk, for talking about EU's projects and strategies, their pivotal role in India for climate change adaptation and mitigation. Now we have the honor to invite Mr. Vinamra Mishra, Director, Tech and Projects, Ministry of MSME, for his address on MSMEs.
Thank you very much for having me. First of all, thanks to Dr. Balakrishnan for organizing this. And also a big thank you for all the participants here, especially the EU Cooperation, the TERI, GIZ, and all of us. When we together create, definitely something good comes out of it. And I'm sure after this session, there'll be something which is really fruitful, and there are so many takeaways that can be taken ahead for building the climate resilience and sustainable development. Talking of the thematic session, the theme of the session today is the MSMEs. And let me give you some numbers which really highlight the importance of MSME in the economy of the country. There was this survey in the year 2017 which stated that there are about 6.3 crore of MSMEs, and these form a part of about 31% of the national GDP of the manufacturing sector, about 7% of the national GDP of the service sector. Also, the MSMEs contribute about 45% of the total national export of the country, if not directly, then as a part of the value chain. The MSMEs are the second highest employers after agriculture in the country. So clearly, whatever MSME does, it goes directly into nation building and GDP. And as we are all so much focused on development, we have really not have our eyes on the sustainability part of it, the climate resilience part of it, and we clearly see the signs that we are having, the extreme temperatures, the rising of sea levels, the gradual melting of glaciers. All these are the signs which really makes us realize that if we are not really thinking of what we are going to do in terms of climate mitigation and sustainability in the development, definitely the resources which will be there for our future generations will be lot less, and there'll be so much so to say poverty of resources in the times to come. So we really need to think on the way and means to mitigate this climate change, and we really want to strategize in the way so that the entire ecosystem and the entire development ecosystem works towards sustainability and achieves the development with that sustainability element in the mind. We at the Ministry of MSME and the Government of India are taking steps towards making the development happen with the MSMEs, also having an eye on the climate change and mitigation measures. And there are quite a few programs. I would like to, because through this session, I would like to highlight what all we are doing and what needs to be done by the MSME, so that we together we can actually work towards the sustainability in the development. And so for us, we think that the interventions can be on three verticals largely. There can be a three-pronged strategy. First would be, definitely we realize that everything comes at a cost. So the cost has to be one of the factors which would determine as to how much the takeoff of the ideas of the projects would be there. Then second would be the awareness and the will. So the creation of awareness, making them realize that whatever is to be done is going to be something which will be very, very useful for the future generations. So that is something which is at the crux of all the mitigation measures. Is the first thing is the fact, the realization of this fact, that yes, whatever needs to be done towards sustainability is something which is very, very important, and it might not have a direct or a very short or some positive result on a short term scenario, but definitely going ahead, it is going to help your business, the MSME business, and their sustainability in the longer term. And then the third vertical, where the government and all the global bodies are working towards, are the regulatory frameworks. So these are the three verticals in which we are trying to work, so that we work increasingly towards climate resistance and resilience. So I would like to highlight a few programs and the schemes which the MSMEs can utilize. And through these schemes and programs, we are really looking to up the ante as far as the work towards sustainable development is concerned. So the first program, which is very, very important, is the MSME Champions program, which has three elements. The first is the zero effect, zero defect scheme, which was initially, there was a clarion call by the Honorable Prime Minister in 2016 on the Independence Day, that the government needs to evolve a strategy of zero defect and zero effect in the MSMEs and in the industrial setup of the country, wherein the processes will follow a zero defect parameters, and while following those zero defect processes, there has to be zero effect on the environment. So after that, the program was formulated, but there were a few chinks in the program, and it could not take off properly. Now, after the approval of the Ministry of the Government of India, we are relaunching this program as MSME Sustainable Z program, which has there are 20 parameters in all for compliance for the MSMEs, for which will be helping them with the consultant and experts and accredited agencies working in the field, out of which 5 these parameters are directly related to environment and the sustainable development and climate resilience. So I think, and then there are a lot of subsidies and help and financial assistance in the program. So I think that is one program which is really going to take the fight towards climate resilience to the next level. Then we have this lean program. The lean program is again a part of this MSME Champions scheme, and the lean program is the world accepted lean manufacturing norm, where you have to be a bit frugal on the input side. So keeping the output same, if the input side is reduced, the efficiency increases. So there are a lot of measures in which there is efficiency which is achieved by the way the processes are carried on, the way the raw materials are managed, the way the entire the system of the MSMEs are managed. So MSME lean scheme is yet another scheme which is again working towards this direction. And then we have this MSME innovative scheme, where we try to take up an idea and build up into a very, very commercially viable business proposition. And we've been working with a lot of startups and a lot of students and individuals as well as MSMEs in this MSME innovative program. And we've already we've been able to fund about 21 ideas which are directly working towards sustainability and towards renewable energy, and how to like for example, there is one project which we are funding with the IIT Kanpur with regards to using the flowers which have been put in the temples of the country, and we are making flora foam, which is an alternative to the thermocol, and this company is now getting big. It is already getting orders from larger corporates. So this is an example in which we are doing towards funding the ideas, working let these the people, the incubators work with the leaders as far as the technology is concerned. So we have onboarded IISc Bangalore, we have onboarded IITs, NITs. We would also look forward to partnering with TERIs if in that case, so that it can be further propagated. So these are the three major components of this MSME Champions program, which we think will go a long way into our efforts for sustainability. Then we are working with the United Nations in Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, for the energy efficient technology and market transformation, which can be achieved through employing the energy efficient technology. So this is the program has just started. It has seen about 2 years of progress, in which we've been able to pilot about 38 technologies in the MSMEs. And these technologies are if they are now we are at that level of replication of these technologies and bulk purchases, and so that the economy of scale is achieved. And at the end of this program, we are looking at really at about reduction of about 1,24,647 tons of CO2 emissions, and savings of about 135.48 gigawatt hours, and the CO2 emission reduction per is aimed at about 86,000 tons. So this is one way in which by taking up new efficient technologies, because we also realize that many MSMEs are energy reliant, and about 30 to 40% of their expenditure is on the energy, and so if the energy efficiency is achieved, and these technologies, we've been able to justify that close to 1.5 years or 2 years, the break even is achieved, and after that the technology out of the savings that they get, and so the technology is as good as free subsequent to about two years, less than 2 years, and this technology is next to free, and all these the environmental benefits to boot with. Then there are a couple of other programs also which we are working with. One, we are working with the MNRE for application of solar thermal technology, by which we are trying to concentrate the solar technologies for achieving the heating and cooling processes, and we have identified about 10 major clusters of MSMEs where we are going to take up this technology. Another project is the design and manufacturing and operations of industrial boilers in about 12 clusters. Again, this is the Global Environment Facility 7 program, which is aimed as to scale up and mainstream the thermal energy optimization in manufacturing MSME. So these are a few things that we are taking up with the global bodies also, and these multilateral institutions have really come forward and helped us a lot in not only designing it, but also generate the demand creation, the market facilitation, and then the supply creation and scaling up. So this is something which we are doing with UNIDO and other multilateral agencies. Then there is this work that we are doing with Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change, MOFCC, with regards to the action plan on single-use plastic. We realize that single-use plastic is something which is really very detrimental to the environmental causes. And so there are a lot of things that the Ministry of MSME is doing for helping the MOEFCC's cause of reduction or complete banning of the single-use plastics. And since MSMEs are both users and producer of SUPs, so we have done a lot of things in way of creation of a database of the users and the suppliers of these SUPs. Then we've done a lot of technical assistance and trainings which have been provided. Then there is another scheme with the ministry which is at the concept stage, where we are going to provide about 15% to 25% at the as a capital subsidy for purchase of machines which are environment compliant, which are compliant to the standards of the global standards in terms of effluents, in terms of energy. So for that, about 15 to 25% of grant will be given to these MSMEs for purchase of these machines, and these machines can then be utilized for taking up the SUP cost also. Then there is a lot of, as I said, the awareness is another vertical where we have to devote a lot of efforts and energy. And so we have been since last 1 year we've been able to conduct about 52 awareness programs, and then there are all these administrative bodies which are under the MSME ministries. They have all joined hands and been able to help us do this awareness and outreach for this environmental cause. And last but not least, I would also like to highlight the program which has been announced in the Honorable Finance Minister's budget speech this year, which goes by the name of RAMP, which is Raising and Accelerating MSME Performance. And this has one important parameter, an important element of greening initiatives. So we have to develop products, we have to use the money which will be lent to us by the World Bank. So this is a program which the Ministry of MSME is doing with the World Bank, and one of the important parameters of the program implementation is the greening of MSMEs. And so utilizing the funds that will be getting as a loan from World Bank, we are in the process of developing the green products, the green technologies, and since this is a 5-year program starting from the next financial year, we would be looking to partner with organizations like GIZ and TERI and similar such organizations which have been pioneers in environmental causes and greening technologies and greening efforts. So to take ahead this program for a greater implementation, better implementation, and a greater outreach. So I think all these things together is what we are looking at and doing for as far as the government and the Ministry of MSME is concerned for our MSMEs. And as I said, the MSMEs are real growth engine of the country. So while the growth is achieved through these MSMEs, any environmental initiatives, if properly proliferated in these MSMEs, I'm sure this is those initiatives will definitely be a successful one if they are adapted and proliferated well in the MSMEs. And we, along with all of you, are really working towards this cause. And I hope, despite all the subsequent waves of this pandemic, the reductions of margins, the profit margins have reduced. The capital infusion is again a challenge. The access to credit and access to finance is problem that these MSMEs are facing. But I'm sure with all our efforts, this environmental cause towards sustainable development and climate resilience will be achieved. Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you.
Mr. Mishra, for talking about the programs and schemes by the government in the MSME sector for immediate climate adaptation and providing the three-pronged strategy of cost, awareness, and regulatory frameworks. Now it is time to start with the panel discussion, which will be moderated by Mr. Jai Kumar Gaurav, Senior Advisor Climate Change, GIZ India. I would like to request you to take this session forward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Actually, first we have a presentation from Professor A K Gosain about the study that we are doing as part of the SPIPA project.
Yes, we would request Professor A K Gosain to come and present on the work on SPIPA project. Thank you, sir. Welcome. Sir, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
Very good afternoon to all of you. I'll try to share my presentation. I hope my presentation is visible.
Yes, yes, sir, it's visible.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
So at the outset, I think I must thank European Union and the GIZ for initiating and instituting this very important study, which we have taken recently. And the objective of this study is basically to find out what are the possible impacts of climate change on MSMEs in India. And while doing so, there's an intent, besides assessing the vulnerability of the MSME sector to the various impacts of climate change, in terms of not only the long term, but short term as well as medium term, because all the policies and the programs are to be decided not for that far long-term strategy, but usually the short term and at the most medium term. And while doing so, also look at what others have, especially the EU relevant MSMEs, and they have learned through their various initiatives, what they have achieved and what kind of actions can be taken for similar sectors in our country for the MSMEs, which can be a useful outcome. Then also stock taking of the status of the climate resilience financing for adaptation solutions for MSME sector, and provide recommendations for enabling climate resilience financing for the MSME sectors. So basically, this whole aspect needs a very thorough study on what are the implications of the climate change in the Indian setting. And major components of the climate change is basically in terms of which will be impacting everybody, including the MSMEs, is the change in the temperature, as well as the change in the precipitation. So these are the major factors. There are many other factors which will be associated factors. So we have, in this particular, we have joint hands. I am representing RNM Consultants, which is a incubating company of IIT Delhi system. And we have our partners in MSME Foundation, who are basically very closely working with the MSME sector in the country. So the first aspect which is required to be taken up is to quantify what is the climate change implications for the country. And we have analyzed the projections of the climate change, the huge amount of data for the whole country, to identify what is the optional and what is the situation going to be in the midterm and the far future term, as well as the short term for the next almost now 80 years. What is going to happen and what are the projections of the climate change models. And that is what is the analysis which is already done and which is being showcased, that during the whole period, on an annual basis, if we divide the total period into different seasons, the winter season, the pre-monsoon, the monsoon, and then the northeast monsoon. For the mid-century and for the end century, what are the implications which are projected to be there after analyzing those models? So you can see here that this is a change in temperature, which is varying from place to place. So we have put the whole thing in a GIS format so that you can have the spatial variability also becoming visible, that what is expected to happen. And since different sectors they are not going to be located only in one place. So it's important to understand that the same sector, how it will be impacted in different parts of the country. And this is a very important aspect. Similarly, the maximum temperature I've just shown, what is going to happen to the minimum temperature, because there are some activities which not only depend on the average temperature of the day, but the minimum temperature is equally important. There are phenological parameters which are, when you are looking at the crop simulations, you will find that the crops are very sensitive to the temperatures. Some crops are sensitive to the minimum temperatures. Some crops are sensitive to very high, the maximum temperatures. And that can be also identified, and you can look at what is the sensitivity of different crops, along with the other factors which are going to be dependent on the temperature. Then the precipitation is another very important aspect, which is basically going to be the most important aspect of this whole global warming situation. That is ultimately everybody is dependent on what you're going to get from the nature in the form of precipitation. So if the precipitation is going to be different for the same setting, then all the aspects are going to be influenced. You can see here, this slide is showing our analysis on the basis of the precipitation being projected by different RCPs. We have taken only two RCPs, 4.5 and 8.5, which is 4.5 is a medium impact in terms of the what we are assuming as what are the emissions. So if the emissions are going to be, we are not able to reduce, then we might land up with RCP 8.5. So even in this case, you will find that the winter, the pre-monsoon, if you look at different seasons, the changes from the present, they are quite appreciable in different parts of the country. There are some areas which are going to get more precipitation. There are some areas which are going to get less precipitation. That is also is going to be utilized when we look at what is the geographical location of the specific MSME, then what is going to be the impact on that MSME in that location. And we have also then analyzed from various other angles, 1 day maximum, 5 day maximum rainfall, because ultimately they are to be used for translating into what are the extremes going to be. For example, we have analyzed that how the drought weeks, which are very important from the agriculture production, because still in our country around 60% of the agriculture is rain-fed. We don't have any irrigation facilities, so they are totally dependent on what comes from the nature and becomes available. And if the distribution pattern of this rainfall during even the Kharif season is going to go haywire, then your present 60% agriculture, which is dependent only on the rain, there's not going to be feasible. It might be impacted very adversely. So here, this analysis is basically showcasing that how the drought weeks are going to increase or decrease depending on what you're going to get in those parts of the country. So majority of the places where you're seeing red, the drought conditions are going to be more severe. And we have analyzed not only with respect to the drought index, which is during you can see here two parameters. One is the drought with the index with -1, which is the drought onset. And the second one is that when this index goes to -2 to -4, that is basically during the period of the crop growth, how the drought is going to be impacted. So for both the scenarios, we have just seen that, and we have that analysis available to be used for the whole country. All this, what I've just mentioned about the drought index, or we are going to look at the other indices which is for the flooding. These indices have been put in place by doing a very, very huge exercise of using the digital twins of all the river basins of our country, and then doing the hydrological modeling and generating the outputs, which are simulated outputs for the future scenarios when those parameters of temperature and the precipitation will be implemented on the landmass of the country and different basins. Then what will be the situation, and capturing all the parameters, like what will be the soil moisture, how the soil moisture will vary, because the model simulates the conditions on a daily basis, and we generate the flows using the past historical data and validate the models, by which we can be certain that whatever is being produced by the model is actually similar to what has been observed for different locations on the river basins. So it's a very, very elaborate exercise. And using this exercise, we are in a position to really find out what will be the situation about the droughts and the floods. And here, this slide is showing basically the human heat stress, because which is very important in the case of MSMEs, that how and this is a combination of the temperature and the humidity. What will be the situation in different parts of the country during different periods, and whether the conditions will be conducive for the workforce to be really work in an environment, and what will be the efficiency loss of those workforces. Then extreme high flow. This is also an output from the models, where we have generated the flows for those precipitation events which have been projected through the climate models, and then translated them onto that what will be the situation in terms of the floods. So you can see here that this is the 99 percentile, which is at least you can say that 1% or extreme high flow. Which are the areas? So all the red areas are going to be impacted very severely with respect to the floods, and the increase in the flood size is going as much as 50% or more than 50% of the existing floods, which is a very, very serious concern. Now, that is some kind of background which I have just mentioned to you, that what is going to be used in terms of evaluating or assessing the vulnerability of different sectors with respect to these climate conditions. But in order to understand further that what will be the actual impact on the specific MSMEs, that is an elaborate exercise which needs to be done, and we need to understand that what their value chains are, how much they are dependent on these factors, which are natural factors, and how these factors are in turn going to influence the situations like infrastructure, and all those issues are to be understood and incorporated. So basically this I will skip. So what we have tried to put together is that all the information which we have on the MSMEs, which has been taken from the literature, and our partners, the MSME Foundation, is helping us in putting this whole information together, where these are the district-wide clusters and the state-wide clusters of different sectors. So all these 15 sectors which are recognized by MSMEs, they are used to put this information in place. If you look at a specific sector, handloom and handicraft cluster, this is the situation. And this is basically, people know more than me. I'll basically try to bring home the point that our exercise needs to first to identify which are the impacts. So some of the impacts we can translate from the information the secondary information we are having, but this will also be strengthened further by having the interaction with the stakeholders, with the specific MSMEs, and getting to sit with them and finding out that what is their experience so far, and what if these things happen, if these are the impacts, the climate change, what they feel that will be the subsequent impact on them in turn. So we are putting basically in terms of the various segments that what is the the impact on different resources. For example, agriculture and agriculture produce. There are many sectors which are dependent on that. What are the possible impacts going to be there, and what are the possible adaptations going to be, which will be further. These are the initial evaluation which we have done, but these will be further strengthened by having more interaction with people like you who are very knowledgeable and will be reaching different groups and getting more information, especially for other resources which are water and water resource, energy and energy as what is going to be the implication of the energy generation and the consumption. So we have put together infrastructure, similarly human, livestock, all these things we have just put together, and we have started working on that. Since basically we are not totally done with the whole thing, we are still in the process, is a work in progress. So it has been decided, because in this time which is available to us, is not possible to take all the sectors. We have decided to take basically the selected sectors. Example, the food processing, we have decided to take up dairy, services, travel and tourism, and textile, cotton and fabric. So this has been decided that we should concentrate on this for the strategy to be formulated, and these are some of the major sectors which on the MSME, which are going to be very important, and from the impact assessment also, they are the sectors which are going to be impacted quite adversely. Then we have also tried to understand further that within the different processes, when the food processing, for example, what are the various segments of that, and similarly in the case of dairy, which are the areas which have to be concentrated upon, the value chain of those sectors. Example, in the case of dairy, what are the threats and adaptation? So which are the different segments which has to be looked at, and then we'll try to quantify what are the possible implications in general, and also in specific when you move from one area to the other geographical area. So it's going to be an exercise where it's not a straightforward thing, because there are too many issues involved, the geographies involved, and the impacts are not uniform. So what we have decided, I'll just skip through these two slides, which are similarly on the travel and tourism situation. And basically, then the textile, again, we have something similar to be identified and put together in a manner where we are looking at what is the raw material, then the yarn and fabric, ready-made garments. All these textile dependent sectors are looked at from various angles, and what is their value chain. What we have also tried to, and this is my last slide, basically our aim is to really put together a framework which will help the MSME industry, because of these variations. When we are talking of on the same sector, the impact is not going to be similar because of the geographical locations and the changes in the agricultural, I mean the agroeconomic zones. So we are bringing in a manner the whole information which can be analyzed and can be kept on improving upon. So this is a GIS framework where we are putting all this information, the base information together. On that, we are imposing the impacts under different scenarios, which are the possible impacts, which are the areas where the flooding is an issue, which are the areas where the drought might become an issue, and then which are the sectors which are going to be impacted on account of these aspects, Similarly, if you are having infrastructure, which is an important thing, which are the areas, if we are talking of even urban areas, which are the areas which are going to have more severe floods in the near future and in the towards the mid-century, then what implications they have on account of the flooding issues, as well as what implication they'll have on the basis of the higher temperatures, how their energy costs will be going up. These issues will be throwing some light, and we'll also look at what impacts have already been done on these areas over the last 10 years, how people are feeling. This will come through the interaction with them, what kind of impacts they have already faced, and some other situations where you might find that there's a tipping point. So if there's a industry which is dependent highly on some agriculture produce, and that specific produce is not going to be available, or it going to be impacted very badly by the climate change, then what kind of alternatives they have? What are the other issues which are going to be really very, very critical for that industry? So there will be some kind of evaluation in some manner that which are the industries which might have to be recommended a change of strategy, which are the industries which might feel that yes, they can survive without by taking some actions, either the structural actions or non-structural actions, and those are things which are I think going to be the outcome of this particular exercise. Will be very interesting to really see that how we can put together all these things in a manner that people can really see for themselves that on what basis, what are the different elements which might be impacting their specific industry, and what kind of actions they can take at their own level, and what are the actions to be taken by the state or the local state, the state government or the central government in terms of the policies, so that the value for money can be there, and also the implications of the climate change and enhancement of the resilience of the MSMEs can be achieved effectively. Thank you.
Now we'll proceed with the panel discussion. Our first panelist, I'd like to invite Dr. Subodh Jindal, President, All India Food Processors Association. And sir, you heard about the study that we are doing as part of SPIPA project, and food sector is one of the key sectors that the study will be focusing on. Being a professional from the sector and being a representative of the sector, the president of the association, what are your views about the challenges that the food sector is going to face in the coming years, decades, due to climate change? If you can talk about top 3-4 priorities for the sector.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Jai Kumar. I'm extremely delighted to see such a wonderful academically prepared discussion on the ground realities, which normally does not happen, in a industry environment. Each of the presentations made have been very, very, well said. Sir, Dr. Gosain has done half my work, and he may recall we are contemporaries from IIT Delhi from our research times almost 47, 48 years back. We were both in Vindhyachal hostel. Okay, so after PhD, I moved into industry, and he continued into research and academics. Thank you, Dr. Gosain. I think when we talk about resilience in the MSME sector, and here I must say that I head an organization called All India Food Processors Association, which looks after the requirements of the growth and development of this sector, which begins with agriculture and ends after their processing, packaging, and distribution to give the product to the consumer. So it's a bridge between the consumer and the farmer. And in this respect, you know, this is a very, very practical kind of a sector. How it is, I will tell you that we have 135 crore people in the country, and we need 3 meals a day, which is 400 crore plus meals every day. Who provides that? It's not the large sector. The large sector is mostly engaged in fancy food production. The real core meal is provided by this MSME sector, which was just mentioned very well by Mr. Mishra. How much in numbers and in employment and in exports and production. Now, so I'm very grateful that TERI, UNIDO, GIZ have looked at this aspect of the agricultural food sector having a strong impact by the climate change. Now, definitely the first one I will begin with and wanted to was the uncertainties posed by the climate variations, the crop and season difficulties. It's not that if a crop fails or gets damaged, it is a small part of the year which the industry suffers. As an example, a few years back, the lychee crop failed, and which means we suffered an entire year of that product. We can't get it back again from somewhere. Okay, it happens every year. Some crop or the other, or maybe more crops, they get affected, and the industry suffers a lot. So understanding how climate change happens, how to be adaptive to it, how to adjust to it, what preparations are required, and what measures to be taken well in time are the kind of issues that we are faced with. Okay. Now the second thing on the sustainability and adaptability is that a lot of technological impact is there. For example, when there is an environment issue, we have to look at our packaging. The current packaging is not healthy enough. The industry, the government, the regulatory bodies, the consumers are concerned with it. But at the same time, there is no alternative packaging available today. The High Court says no plastic packaging. Well taken. But then the consumer needs milk in a pouch. The other alternatives are really not practical today. To come back to a glass bottle may not be easy. So what to do? Research has to take a lead and give the country or the world alternative packaging. So technology comes into this. Then we need machines for that, packaging lines for that, which means a whole lot of technological research, development, and innovation in packaging, package design and packaging machinery is very, very critical for this sector, which is difficult owing to the climate and environmental issues. The third is owing to both the first two, the agriculture climate change impact and the cost of packaging change, research and technology in machinery, this sector has a huge requirement of financial support. The large sector has its own means, and half of them have global footprint. So they are able to manage, and most of their solutions come from somewhere. But for the MSME sector, which feeds our 135 crore people 3 meals a day, somebody has to think about it. And that is where comes the role of the bodies that which you have, all gotten together, the government, the MSME ministry. And I was happy to listen to Mr. Mishra, the director, who laid various, schemes. But then, since we are speaking in-house, it's not a public forum. There are a lot of shortcomings in the government's policy framework and schemes which have not reached to the ground level, which we can sit together with the ministry and talk about. But we have to flag those issues also. Okay, and there are a lot of them. We can put them in detail, number them, and discuss together on a more academic and also grassroots reality. Now, the next thing before I will finish this part of the round is that unfortunately, the role of the financing institutions in our country right from decades has been more focused on the higher valued credits, and a number of them we see have become NPAs over the last 2, 3, 4 years. Okay. This facilitation of credit facilities to the MSMEs who require money in lakhs only, not in hundreds or thousands of crores. If a financial institution is supporting one large unit with 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 crore, we can as well support, okay, maybe 50,000 MSME units with just giving them 10, 20, 50 lakh rupees. And they will produce much better result in the sustenance of the country and our food requirement and distribution to our masses as compared to the higher credits of thousands of crores given to certain companies who, in fact, I don't know whether I can say that, how many of them default. So here is my thought for NABARD and SIDBI and other financial institutions. I have the occasion for the last almost 3 decades to sit on government meetings in Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Food Processing Industries to deliberate on these issues, and we give them our inputs. And we have SIDBI and NABARD representatives also in these meetings, and we share them our concerns as a family. Unless we become supportive of the MSME sector, we handhold them, we encourage them, and maybe we will have to some extent relax our rigid, procedural requirements. I appreciate the financial institutions have a lot of procedural and regulatory requirements they have to observe because they have a responsibility that the fund is not wasted. But then,
sir, can we conclude and move to the next speaker?
Yeah, please.
Second
round. Fine. So these are the 3 points on agriculture, raw materials, technology, and funding in the first round. Then we can come to the action points. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Next is Mr. R K Vij, President of the Textile Association of India. So, sir, over to you for your first round of comments about the impacts that the textile sector is going to have due to climate change, and maybe 1 or 2 priorities like Mr. Jindal mentioned, finance and easier procedures for accessing finance. So, welcome. Over to you. Sir, we can't hear you. You're on mute. Sorry.
Thanks, Mr. Gaurav. And good afternoon, everybody. So you have selected me as a panelist to discuss some of the problems of MSMEs and related to the textile. as said that there are about 6.3 crores of small, medium, micro units are there. And if you see, this textile is the basic business which India has. So for a person, we need roti, kapda, and makan. Roti, to Jindal Saab de denge hame. Then we need kapda also. And if we get kapda and roti, then we can get to makan also. Looking to the textile part, earlier, as on the board, about 40 to 50 lakh small or medium units are there, which are working. And the textile, looking to the back history, we have Dhaka ki Malmal, we have Kanjivaram, we have Banarsi Langas. These are the people, they are coming from the very, very small villages. You can see that a Dhaka Malmal, you can pass through a ring. And as on today also, a sari can be packed in a matchbox. So I just tell you, the problem of textile is that, means if you go to the east of Assam, UP, Bihar, and inside, you will find that they have very small, small factories just on the road, just on the villages. They are not getting financial help. Just whenever any climate change is there, suppose flood comes, everything wash out. Their stock also wash out. They are not able to get their factory revived. Even just like they talked, some of the animal breeders are there. They don't know about when the drought will come. They will not get the water to drink himself for the family, how they will feed to their cattle. So they are the problems. We have made lot of schemes, but that schemes goes to the, corporate capacity. Now just PLI scheme has come. So no, it is not for the MSME. MSMEs as on today is employing about 78% of the population and 23% of the national GDP. So my points are, the problems are, of course, finance, everywhere problem is there. Government allocate the finance, but it doesn't reach to the lowest person, the person who needs. It goes to the broker and broker. So as Narega is being now done, so it should reach to that. Another thing is there, means some of the big Tata, Adani, Ambani, or even the MPs, they should be given the small, small area for the textile unit to grow. They should be given market. They should be, their product should be highlighted. There should be, now there are very small, we have gone from Textile Association of India, we had gone to some of the villages. There is a family of 4 person. They have 4 looms. In the morning, they just buy. They go to the broker, they buy the yarn and make the fabric and sell it. And tomorrow is, if there is a holiday, they don't have the money to buy this yarn for the next day. So my point is there, technology. They know how to produce the fabric. So they should know the technology. They should be given consultant. They should be given CA advisors. Corporate and big companies can arrange all these things. So these are the problem apart. So as Mr. Jindal said, they need only very small money. So 4 people, a unit need only 10,000 rupees or 4,000 rupees, 5,000 rupees, just to have a material, convert it, give it to fabric. Now, earlier dhoti was there. Now lot of 130 crore people are there. They need clothes. So my point is that textile people are very, very poor because their margins are not there. If you go, you see industry, any industry you see, their EBITDA is, means more than 2 digit or 3 digit or 4. Here is only, they just get the labor part. So my point is that they should get the finance, the right person should be there. Area wise, some association should be taken the area wise. Okay, you will take this villages and you will increase their productivity. You will give them benefit, very small money they need. So another thing, technology. Another third thing, the power short is there. So we are giving solar power, solar subsidies to everybody. They should be given solar subsidy. They should be given facilities how to, and another thing, they can make gray fabric, just only 1 point, and they have to dye it. So now government has come up immediately, no dyeing, pollution is there. So that they should be given some ETP plant for that small manufacturer. Now the rag pickers are there. Now we are making fabric from the rags, from the PET bottles. So these are the facilities should be given to the small entrepreneurs. Then you will see lot of employment, lot of entrepreneurs will be there. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So some additional points that you mentioned in what was mentioned by Dr. Jindal, particularly this kind of requirement for ETPs and some direct financing possibility. Now moving on in the panel, we have Dr. Sriram Apulingam, who is DGM and with the Bankers Institute for Rural Development, NABARD. So, sir, we would like to hear from you about the initiatives that NABARD has that can help in climate change adaptation in the MSME sector.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Gaurav, hope I'm audible.
Yes. Yes.
I'll try to pick off from where Mr. Jindal Sahab has left off. Prima facie, NABARD is more into agriculture and rural development. And to that extent, we focus on a lot of financial and non-financial interventions. Coming to today's topic, because I don't want to talk much about what we are and what we do. Coming to today's topic, one of the first and foremost things which we do, because we work predominantly in rural areas, the first thing we do is we have got a lot of pilots as far as natural resource management is concerned. By virtue of natural resource management, while they have a primary focus on agriculture, there is a secondary aspect to that also, I think, which takes care of some of the issues raised by some of my earlier speakers. We also focus on livelihood promotion. And now livelihood promotion mostly comes from the off-farm activities that is not related to the farmer. And this we are promoting as a part of what we can say as a risk mitigation strategy. And here you find out the amount requirement is barely about 25 to 40,000. This we are taking care through a cluster-based approach during the project period. Now, once the project period is complete, what we have come up with is something to increase the access to finance. We have brought about a concept of sustainable finance. So what we are trying to do is, in the project areas wherein we are gradually exited, any financial institution that is interested in upscaling the activity has to bring about a bankable plan, like how they are going to finance, how many units they are going to finance. For all these things, we are giving them refinance at a very nominal rate that's about around 4%. That is the first intervention which I wanted to talk about. NABARD, through Bankers Institute of Rural Development, also has set up a Center for Climate Change at Bankers Institute of Rural Development. Among the other activities which we are doing, we are also looking into capacity building of financial institutions. Because the moment I talk about MSMEs and finance, and especially climate resilient MSMEs, this is a gray area as far as many financial institutions are concerned. So in association with GIZ, we have developed a number of toolified modules, basically where what actually tells us is the approach of trying to understand the risks that we are facing from a climate point of view as far as any bankable solution is concerned, and how we can convert those risks into opportunities. So this is one aspect which we are trying to cover through that. And again, for financial institutions, we have got a number of training capacity building programs which are actually focusing on development of bankable models. So this is the second aspect. Now I'll come to just about 2 or 3 more minutes I was just taking. We had in the past been promoting a number of agribusiness and what I can say startups in the incubation, through the incubation model. But one of the biggest issues that came up was how to upscale them. So majority of the units used to actually go defunct even in the value of death stage itself. So to focus on this, what we have started off something very recently in the last year is we are providing catalytic capital assistance for supporting both agriculture and that is agribusiness and rural startups. Wherein through NABARD, we are actually infusing up to 10 crore rupees in the form of debt or equity. And we have got two dedicated subsidiaries, that is NAP Kisan and NAP Samriddhi, who are looking into the financial requirement aspects also. Both grant and loan assistance is available as a part of that. As far as northeastern hilly and difficult areas are concerned, the primary focus is on dying arts and traditions. So because there the cluster sizes are very small. So what we have done is we are promoting them as mini OFPO clusters, that is off-farm promotion clusters. So dedicated towards reviving small arts or dying arts, the village traditional industries. That's what we are focusing on. Last but not the least, GIZ actually developed in the past module that was called as Climate Expert. And while this Climate Expert module was basically enabling any user to actually factor this into the form of what I can say, arriving at an adaptive solution. As a part of our climate adaptation finance in rural India project with GIZ, which we are implementing presently, we are fine-tuned this model for farmers producer organizations. And if you look at it, it's basically a four-step approach. What it talks about is at the first stage, it tries to assess the climate change impacts. And then based on the climate change impact of that particular unit or particular activity, what are all the associated risks and opportunities? What are all the adaptation instruments or that are available for that? Doing a cost benefit analysis of that, and then finalizing an adaptation strategy. This entire thing is through a spreadsheet module. So it is very easy to use, and I'm happy to announce that we are more or less taken care of the second level version. I think by April or May this year, we'll be coming out with the full version of that module. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sriram. Now, very interesting initiatives by NABARD, and although they are slightly broader in their scope, but do have a climate angle that is very focused as well. So now moving on to our next speaker, Mr. Rainer Axter. He has been leading a global initiative called SEED, and is also he is also one of the board of directors in Adelphi. So, Rainer, you heard about the challenges that we are facing in India in the MSME sector and some of the initiatives that NABARD mentioned. Would you like to please share some initiatives that are global and based on your experiences of working in other countries in Europe, that what could be done in India to help in climate resilience in the MSME sector?
Thank you, Kumar, for the introduction. And thank you very much for inviting me. I hope next year it could be at the Habitat Center again. I've been working for more than 20 years in India by now. And yeah, I miss it that I haven't been able to travel for the last 2 years. So my last visit was actually for the WSDS. So looking forward to next year. Thanks for inviting me. I would like to address a couple of points. The first one, which was mentioned here, was climate finance. And I think climate finance can play an important role, especially for MSMEs in India, but also generally in the world, to access more finance to them. And I think that was very well resonated by the introductions from the agriculture food sector, but also from the textile sector. But now comes the big but. Banks do what banks always do. As you know, good to see you, Mr. Rajiv Kumar from SIDBI, since we have been working in the past with SIDBI. We've also been working with NABARD and with BIRD on these 2 to 5 tools, which were mentioned. And we're working quite a bit with the European Investment Bank, which is probably one of the leading banks. And it's also, of course, the EU Bank on this topic of MSME finance. And I think one thing we have to keep in mind there, that if we look at resilience for MSMEs, there is always the issue with adaptation that usually there isn't a cash flow involved. And this makes it difficult for banks to finance it. But with a willingness to change something, and the international community has a huge willingness to change something, The Indian government has a huge willingness to change something. This additional money can be used to now make access to finance for MSMEs a little easier. But we will still stay within the old and good system of mostly loan and credit finance. So the question is how to tweak that and how to move around. And here I think the development banks like SIDBI, like NABARD, like EIB will have to play and will play a prominent role. We work quite a bit with the International Development Finance Club, which is an association of several development banks, bilateral ones. SIDBI is one of the members there. The world always turns to development banks in times of crisis, and we're in a times of crisis. So now we need some creative solutions. Looking at the MSME business models and looking at what we see, also working in countries in Africa, but also in different Asian countries, including India, is that there are MSMEs which have, I would say, a normal business model, and they have to deal with climate change. And then we have MSMEs which actually set up a new business model, which deal with climate change, but see it as a business opportunity. And the financing for both groups is quite different, and we have to keep them separate. So, for example, in clean tech, and technology was mentioned quite a few times, there is a huge business opportunities for equity investment, for loan investment to move things. There's investments to make companies more efficient and effective. But there will also be challenges in the credibility of these MSMEs, and there will be challenges also for the companies which just now deal with negative impacts of climate change. And that's something which has to be addressed. I would like to mention, you mentioned SEED already, where you can find quite a few examples. And we work with the German government, we work with GIZ, we work with international organizations like the French Development Agency on this topic to identify business models which actually work for climate resilience within MSMEs. One project I would like to mention there is the UGEFA program, which is Uganda Green Enterprise Finance Accelerator, where we directly work for the EU delegation in Uganda to help hundreds of SMEs which have a green business models and work with banks, commercial, non-commercial banks to move things forward. I think especially the sector of agriculture has a huge potential in this regard, but also urban infrastructure, which wasn't mentioned here. There's a huge need for urban infrastructure, and this need is going to change. And they usually have a viable business model, and they can create a cash flow, which then can be used to repay the loans. I think in general, and I'll come to an end here to give also the other speakers a chance to respond. I think what I'm taking away at the moment is that, and that's I like the discussion here. We're not talking about is there a problem. We're talking about what are the solutions. And to put it into more drastic measures, and especially looking at the development banks, in Germany, the KfW, which is also active in India, has been founded after the Second World War, under times of crisis. And we're in a similar situation, like the war is finished now. We don't have to discuss this anymore. Now it's a time to organize the peace. And I think organizing the peace, all the actors which are present here, ministries, development banks, international organizations, think and do tanks like ours, like TERI, will play a role, and looking forward to that. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ranil. Moving on to our next speaker, Mr. Rajiv Kumar, General Manager, SIDBI. So, sir, you heard about the challenges that the sectors are facing, MSME sector companies are facing, and also finance was mentioned so many times as a challenge, and the challenge is not just in like the availability, but also access. So can you take us through some of the initiatives that SIDBI has taken to improve financing for MSME sector and how it can help in climate resilience in adaptation? Thanks.
Thank you, Jay. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I must again underline that MSME sector is a very important sector of Indian economy, and as highlighted by everybody else. And yes, they are also vulnerable to the climate change, and a lot needs to be done, particularly in the financing side. SIDBI has been very actively pursuing this agenda, and we basically see few challenges as also highlighted by the other speakers. First and foremost is the availability of the funds. We are working in this area and SIDBI has been tapping various sources, including through Government of India. SIDBI is also an accredited entity of Green Climate Fund. We are also working with Green Climate Fund to get resources to India, and also we are talking to multilateral and bilateral agencies, including World Bank, ADB, AFD, KFW, GIZ, etc., for bringing in money in for various type of projects. And so far, SIDBI has been focusing mainly on the manufacturing MSMEs. We have realized that MSME sector also has a potential to bring in technologies and innovations, which can, and they also provide a lot of services which can help in not only MSMEs, but other sectors become energy efficient. And this has also been underlined by this budget also, wherein they have mentioned about energy service companies. So, so we are also focusing, basically revising our focus to bring these type of sectors in our fold. For second is that besides giving loans, we are also looking at other options of raising money by the MSMEs through these impact bonds, green and climate bonds, etc. So we are working on that area also. We have also realized over a period that cost of funds is a major concern for the MSMEs. And while SIDBI has been able to bring down the cost to a certain level, probably the lowest level, which is at presently the loans are priced between a range of 5.5 to 8%. But these are normal loans. There are other schemes also, like financing innovative technology projects, wherein we can provide loans as low as 3%. And also for energy efficiency and climate change projects, we are providing loans starting from 4.90% to 7%. So rate of interest also is a major concern. And when we are raising resources, that is one of the concern which we are looking at. Capacity building of MSMEs and banks, has also been raised. So we are working in this area also in a big way, and we are basically implementing cluster-focused interventions. We have already launched a program in certain clusters of Bihar, and very shortly we are going to launch in around 10 clusters in West Bengal, wherein we'll be sitting, our agencies will be sitting in the clusters for a period of 6 to 9 months, and they'll be helping the MSMEs in becoming energy efficient by helping them in getting their energy audits and getting the finance. We are also, we have realized the fact that infrastructure, basically to meet the adaptation issues, we need to focus a lot on the infrastructure. And that's why SIDBI has formed a cluster development vertical, a recent vertical. And we have launched a fund of around rupees 8,000 crore. And this money is being channelized through state governments at a cost of 2.75% per annum only. And through state governments, we will be making hard interventions in the clusters identified by the state governments, particularly with regard to the common facility centers and the other infrastructure which is needed. So one example with regard to the delivery of credit, which in that area also SIDBI has been working. And one example which I would like to quote here is PM Swanidhi scheme. I think you might have all heard about it. It's a scheme which is for street vendors. And this scheme was launched when the COVID was at its peak. And I'm very pleased to tell you that more than 45 lakh loans have been given to more than 45 lakh street vendors. And these are small loans of rupees 10,000 each. And the entire operations were done when the COVID was at its peak, and it was digital end-to-end workflow, which was powered by SIDBI, and obviously with the support of state government and the banks, commercial banks, these loans were delivered with the excellent track record. So in similar online and digital delivery channels are being worked for the other bigger loans also. And SIDBI has already launched online loan applications, and we have also launched a e-documentation facility. So for documentation also, the borrower need not to travel. Online quick e-documentation facility can be done. We have also launched certain quick dispensation products, wherein we are able to give loans within a period of 3 to 4 days. Loans can be dispersed. So these are some of the things with regard to the, particularly with regard to energy efficiency and climate change. SIDBI has created a dedicated vertical which is based at New Delhi. I'm a part of that. We have been very actively engaged in the area of energy efficiency in MSMEs, and we have implemented a couple of World Bank projects, and we have been operating lines of credit from various agencies, including JICA, KFW, AFD, etc. We have channelized more than 1.5 billion US dollar to more than 15,000 plus MSMEs only for the energy efficiency improvements. So, but obviously for a country like India, where the MSME size is huge, this is a small amount. We are continuously striving to increase this amount. Those we call it as pilot projects. But now when we are talking to our donors, our multilateral partners, we are talking for a huge amount of money, so that we can then channelize it to the MSMEs. MSMEs on their part are also coming forward. In fact, I am very pleased to tell the House that in many of the MSME clusters wherein SIDBI has been working, MSMEs are in fact coming on their own. In fact, in certain cases in the past 4 or 5 years, many of the MSMEs have undergone energy audits 3 to 4 times. When they have made a practice to undergo annual energy audits, and they are implementing whatever the recommendations are there. And obviously, for financial assistance, they are approaching us. So these are some points which I would like to highlight here, and not to forget last. We are also encouraging energy service companies, ESCOs in a big way, and we are running a program for that. So with that, I would stop here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I think we have run out of time, so it's not possible to have another round of questions, but maybe we can go through each speaker just highlighting one priority, not more than one sentence. I request that you would like to give as a message as a priority from your sector or the work that you're doing. Just one sentence. So starting with Dr. Jindal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gaurav. Very briefly, I would just like to make a request, and that request is to SIDBI and to NABARD, that there is so much to think and to do that we need to sit together. And I will be happy if you can invite All India Food Processors Association as one of your, discussion committee members, and we will give you grassroots requirements in different sectors, in different clusters, where in an infrastructure the need is there, where you need to
Thank you.
support.
Actually,
Yeah,
we
okay,
need to
okay,
conclude
that's
for
fine, that's fine,
Yeah,
that's fine.
thank you so much. It's
So
very genuine
I
request.
will give you my contact reference, and then I will request you to, engage in the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank
Sure,
you.
sir. Thank you.
Yes. So Edwin, yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, also just one phrase, and actually it was also said by Reina, and I made it in my introduction, just to say that indeed investment in climate resilience should be seen as an opportunity and as a investment in the future. So we focus very much on the cost, but I think it would be good if we focus on how to strengthen the sector through increasing climate resilience. Back over to you, Jay.
Thanks, Edwin. Mr. Vij.
I will only say one thing. The government, bank should give some incentives to the rag pickers, to the bottle pickers, so that now most of we are making recycled fabric, and another thing for the ministry to make it compulsory to use some percentage of recycled bottles in the food items, in the beverages items. This is the only thing is there. So lot of employment will come.
Thank you, sir. Thanks. Mr. Sriram.
Yeah, I'll actually it is a way of thinking forward. I think what I would like to focus on at this particular time, especially as far as banks and financial institutions, especially is one of the issues that Jindal Sahab and Vij Sahab both they are raised. Uniformly, we don't have any taxonomy as far as India is concerned, as far as banking industry especially is concerned, as to what exactly constitutes green finance. So I think the primary focus should be on that. Reserve Bank is very shortly coming out with a white paper on sustainable finance. So hope to see, I think a number of these issues will definitely get cleared out at that point of time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks. Rainer?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. I think there should be a combination of financial support, which we've been talking about now, with non-financial support. And this should be combined because MSME will need both to move things forward. Otherwise, it will be quite futile to allocate most of the efforts. Thanks.
Thanks. Very good point. Yeah, Mr. Rajiv, any one concluding sentence from your side?
Yeah, my request to all the stakeholders here is that we all must act together. MSME sector is a huge sector, and we will have to work together so that the sector as well as Indian economy becomes resilient and strong. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. So with that, I would like to conclude the panel discussion. It was very enriching and a lot of new ideas have come up. We'll try to include them in our report as well as get back to you for more inputs and share with you the final report as well. Now I hand over to Dr. Shruti for concluding the session. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jay. It's been an insightful and engaging. It gives me immense pleasure to thank our partners, the European Union, GIZ, and TERI for supporting the event today. I would like to convey my thanks to Mr. Edwin Koekkoekk, First Counselor, European Delegation to India, for guiding us and setting up a context for the need of adaptation strategies and climate resilience for MSME in Indian sector. Thank you, Mr. Vinamra Mishra, Director, Technology and Projects, Ministry of MSME, for conveying the initiatives taken by Ministry of MSME for a three-pronged strategy taken by government for mitigation of climate risk in MSME sector. The initiatives of MSME's Sustainable Z program and the Lean program given by you look very promising. I would like to convey my heartfelt thanks to Professor A K Gosain for presenting the first findings of the study on the impact of climate change on Indian MSMEs, assessing vulnerability of the sector and finding the impact on value chain on the same. I am sure, sir, the study would further enable adaptation strategy formulation for climate resilience. My heartfelt thanks to our expert panelists, Dr. Subodh Jindal, Mr. Vij, Dr. Apul Lingam, Mr. Rainer Agster, and Mr. Rajiv, along with our moderator, Mr. Jai Kumar Gaurav, for having a very fruitful and engaging deliberation on climate change resiliency, MSME sector. I would like to acknowledge the efforts of my colleagues, Dr. Malini Balakrishnan and Mr. Prahlad Tiwari in organizing the thematic track. Would like to acknowledge our host, Charvi Mishra, and our rapporteur, Ms. Neeti Mahajan, for ensuring a smooth conduct. Last but not the least, our audience and all the participants for attending the thematic track. Thank you so much. Thank you so much all. Have a good afternoon.